Bien, buenas tardes a todos. Gracias por asistir a otra conferencia magnífica. Llevamos una mañana extraordinaria. Todos tenéis el programa y creo que sobran palabras para presentar al ponente que viene hoy, Alexandre Gabriel, el autor de Citadel. Reconocido y apuntado algo de currículum porque tiene muchísima trayectoria y mucho que contarnos. Es francés, para mí algo que es bueno porque adoro Francia. Fue el primero en introducir el alambique a fuego directo para elaboración de gin. Primero que se interesa en las ginebras envejecidas, que vamos a probar hoy. No es muy habitual, pero os aseguro que es un escalón más en la calidad y en la búsqueda de productos con identidad y diferenciadores. Para quien no lo conozca, también es creador de los rones Plantation. De hecho, está reconocido como el mejor blender de rones internacionalmente. Y claro, alguien se pregunta, ¿pero esto no es del Caribe? Bueno, al final lo que hace falta es mucha magia y mucho ensamblaje en los rones. Su dry Curaçao, también otra de las bebidas, como veis es un creador en potencia. Su dry Curaçao está entre los mejores 4 productos del año reconocidos. Bueno, y así podría seguir citándolo y citándolo. Lo mejor es que nos vaya exponiendo qué cosas hace y qué significa para él una ginebra envejecida. Muchísimas gracias, Alexandre. A su lado izquierdo tiene a Matthew Coase, he pronunciado bien. Matthew es el gran ambasador internacional, mano derecha de Alexandre, y otra persona del que podemos extraer muchísima información y opiniones. Y Jesús de los Mozos, a quien todos conocéis, le tenéis en el stand, otro excelente profesional dentro del mundo de la coctelería que ha sabido bien arroparse al lado de estos titanes. Sin más, os voy a dejar con ellos, preguntarles todo lo que podáis, que para eso los hemos traído, para que aprendamos todo mucho y de esa manera entendamos que una ginebra no es solamente un líquido, es mucho más. Gracias a los tres por venir y encantados de teneros.
Hello everyone, I am sorry I cannot speak Spanish, so I really apologize. So we will be doing this seminar in English. So today we're going to focus, first of all I want to say something. I've been making Citadel now for quite many years, and I will always remember almost 15 years ago when the company Amel Goodman with César Villar, the father, came to us with a big dream. The dream of making and having, he saw a trend in Spain about drinking quality gin tonic, gastronomic gin and tonic. And that was 15 years ago, and I think you should be very proud. In Spain, you have America inventing jazz, or French people inventing French cancan or something like this. Then I think the Spanish gin and tonic is becoming famous, little by little, in different countries. I just read an article in the New York Times about Spanish gin and tonic. So you should be proud of this. And I think you, being part of the industry, are really part of this success of the quality gin and tonic, which I think it's a great contribution to good taste. So not only I want to say congratulations, but I want to say thank you, because of this work that has been done in Spain with quality gin and tonic, small guys like me can make a living. We can actually enjoy and continue making a product that we love to make with Citadel Gin. So I just wanted to say this little note about what is happening here in Spain that everybody is looking at. And France is a very conservative country, little by little, but I can say that now in Spain, in France, in Paris, you see more interest about gin and tonic. So congratulations and thank you. So now we are going to talk about a very specific subject is aged gin. Now, at Citadel, we reintroduced aged gin. We'll cover this. Aged gin is actually a very traditional thing. And we reintroduced aged gin at Citadel in 2008. I remember this very time we're researching about the history of different spirits. Now, aged gin is actually a very old tradition of gin making. You know why? There's one really main reason is necessity. In the old days, how can you keep gin when it's distilled? The only way to store gin was in a cask, right? Because if you think about it, making a bottle was very expensive. You know, it was more expensive than a crystal bottle glass. There's a guy called Claude Boucher in the late 19th century, 1800s, who invented a way to make a mechanic bottle. But before, the only way to really store spirits was a cask. So some people will challenge me and say, what about glass? We talk about it was very expensive. What about stainless steel? No stainless steel tank. Of course, some clay pot, but that was very fragile. So remember, in the old days, every spirit was stored in wood. So every spirit had a little bit of aging. And the history of Citadel is actually very interesting. Long time ago, Citadel was established in 1775. At the time, you probably know that the ancestor of gin is Genever, right? Genever, some people will say Genever existed since 1610 with a guy called Francis de la Boë, but all this is wrong. There was Genever much before that. And at that time, in 1775, two French distillers established in northern France a distillery called Citadel. They did most of their business was to smuggle, to sell illegally gin or genièvre at the time to England. Because the English at that time drank a lot of genièvre, a lot of gin, the ancestor of gin. And at that time, I found all these old documents from the late 1700s, and they were saying that this gin was transported from France to England in cask. And I'm thinking, of course, the only way to store gin was cask. I am a cellar master by training. You know, cellar master, we learn how to blend. It's a 20-year training. So, for me, it's a natural thing to work with cask. So in 2007, we started aging gin. And the result was beautiful. It was wonderful. And I will explain what happens with aging gin. And my two friends here, at the end of the presentation, will explain how aged gin can be used. That will be your job after mine. So, but how aged gin is made, because it's very interesting, we made Citadel Reserve. We are a small artisanal company. We're a family business. And it's interesting to see that now you have big companies making aged gin. So I saw recently one of the big distillers, in London now making a reserve as well. So it's a good thing. I think it's giving another angle, another way of drinking gin. Now, in 2007, I knew a lot about aging, but I knew nothing about aging gin. So we needed to do the research. And usually this type of research takes 5 years. And in 2007, what we tasted, a little bit 6 months later, was so delicious, was so good taste, that we decided to do 2008 vintage Citadel. That was the first vintage that we released, 2008. And then at that time, we were like, children in a candy store. We were very happy, very proud of this. So we did, the aging was quite profound. We used higher char cask, 6 months. So quite substantial aging. Maybe a little too much. So in 2009, we did a lighter char, a lighter type of aging. It was quite delicate. 2010, we realize that actually the aging changes the balance. So we use a little more juniper berries and we use a little more violet, you know, to give the flowery notes. Because the aging, what the aging does, it gives you a round, a smooth base, you know, in your palate. And then, so the aging is very good, but also the aging is pushing down a little bit the flowery notes. So we understood, was better to distill a little more flowery notes to balance after the aging. So we discovered this 2010, 2011 we fine-tuned this, 2012 we feel we're so happy about the result. But then, now we are fine-tuning the aging. We know what type of cask. And so 2012 we're very happy with that blend. We even added a little bit botanical from the French Alps. You know the Alps in the, you know where we go skiing, right? The French Alps, there's a herb called Genepi. That's a very specific herb, that's quite expensive, but that complements very well the aging, that gives taste, and also gives a nice freshness to the aged spirit. And the research goes on. 2013, I will just share a little secret with you. I'm using a Solera system for the aging of Citadel 2013. That will be the next vintage. It's not finished. We are just working on it right now with different type of casks, with a mother, you know, a little bit like a whiskey Solera system, because we're using different type of casks. So that was my little secret of today that I wanted to share with you of the research going on. Because we feel now that with Citadel Reserve, the formula about the botanicals we feel to our requirement is just perfect. And we have now fine-tuned the type of oak we're using, but we want to use also a little bit of, you know, a Pinot de Charme cask to add a little note. So there was a little touch that you will see in the 2013. And 2013 might be the year we take the year out, because it will be the Citadel. We're still thinking about this. So that's the research that has been done step by step. Now, when we launched Citadel Reserve in 2008, at that time, I received a lot of letters from other gin producers wanting to come and visit us, because we know each other, most of everyone. I saw there's Jared here, for example, but I received letters saying, okay, we like aged gin and we want to age our own gin. You know, in cognac, I've made cognac also. We aged cognac for a long time, so we have the know-how. And I helped a few of the producers to work on their gin, to age it. And I discovered that not every gin can age. Not every gin can age well. There's one reason for this, is that to age well, a gin needs to have texture, needs to have substance. And how you get substance in a gin is the way you distill it. If you're interested about gin distillation, tonight at 8 o'clock, we are doing a seminar. We will be distilling here, if we find the heater, but we will be distilling here, you know. And so, when you make gin, there are many ways to make gin, by the way. That will be the seminar at 8 o'clock, the different type of distillation for gin. But Citadel is an open flame, what we call naked flame distillation. When you distill, you know, you warm up something and what evaporates, you make a drink with it, right? You can either use a flame or you can use steam, a steam jacket around it. Now, if you use an open flame, it's like cooking meat. If you make a steak, for example, if you cook meat on the pressure cooker, you know, with steam, it's cooked, all right. Or if you boil the meat, it's cooked, all right. But it's not so tasty as if you make it steered in a nice pan. So, for that reason, it's the same thing with distilling, by the way. If you use an open flame distillation, you create what we call a nice caramelization. That creates texture on your palate. And also, when you look at the pot still, if you have, I'm going to be a little technical here, but the height of the swan neck, you know a pot still? That's the thing that you use to distill, right? If it's a lower swan neck, you get more of the essential oil. You know what's magical about gin is you get a lot of essential oil. In fact, some countries believe gin is good for your health. I let you be the judge. I think it depends how much you drink. But but really the essential oil are the elements that you extract from the botanical from the distillation. If you have a very high swan neck, you extract less of these botanicals. If you have a lower swan neck, you extract more of the botanicals. The pot still we use in Cognac, it's a very ancient design for Citadel, is a lower swan neck. So we get a lot of the oily, natural element, essential oils, from the juniper berries, of course, and also from the other ingredients. And that gives you a nice texture, that gives you a nice body. When you taste Citadel and when you look on the glass, you will always see there's some legs. That's this oiliness and this body that is wonderful for the aging. So this is one of the elements. And it's good when it's not aged also, because you know, some people, they taste Citadel and they say to me, it's nice, a little bit sweet. In fact, Citadel is no sugar added, it's extra dry. But the way it's distilled gives a mouth feel, a feeling in your mouth of comfort. And that's due to a lower swan neck distillation with a naked flame, with a nice caramelization, and also extracting all the nice oily elements from the botanicals. So maybe you will say to me, why not everybody does this? The problem when you do this, the naked flame distillation, is that you have to distill very slowly. Because if you distill too fast, it sticks at the bottom of the pot and you have to throw everything out. So you have to do a very slow distillation, and that takes time. And the distiller has to know very well what they are doing, otherwise you burn, it's like when you cook a steak, you burn the whole pot. So this is one of the reasons. And this texture that you have, this body, this oiliness of the product that you have in Citadel is great potential for aging. A friend of mine, I've done experiments with gins that were distilled at a higher proof with a higher swan neck, don't have much potential for aging for that single reason. So that's the key element for aging, for making a gin that is aged. Now, some of you will know my work and the work I'm doing a lot of research about distillation and blending, both about what we are discovering now, but also research about what was done long time ago. And to me, I've studied gin and all the different years. I'm actually writing a book on the history of Geneviève and gin in the way it was distilled, because I've done that research personally. And to me, the golden age of gin, the best time of gin, where you taste the best products, was from the late 1800s, 1890, up to Second World War, 1940. This is when you have the best gins, and for two reasons. At the time, you know, before that, gin was more with the wheat taste, was more like Genever. It was a good product, but it was a different product. In the late 1800s, you start to have the pure gin, where the botanicals are very essential. And then also you have still the history of the aging that's still there. And at the time they were called the yellow gins. You see, I collect old bottles of spirits made long time ago. Sometimes, you know, some chefs are jealous of me or of us, the distillers, because the beautiful thing when you're a distiller, you can actually taste a young product made 200 years ago. You can actually taste a gin, young gin, fresh gin, that's from 1890. So that's a good thing. And it's hard to find old young gin because most people, you know, either they drank it or they dispose of it. But I have a collection of gins that are gin made in the late 1800s, early 1900s, that were actually aged, that are yellow gins. So I was able to benchmark and to compare these gins with what we are doing right now. And you can say that at that time, gin was beautiful, because you had the complexity. And I think it's after Second World War, you know, with the boom in the population, quantity was important and quality was not so important, that gin became more simple and more industrial. But you know, at that time, gin was very complex. It's funny because some of you may know a bartender. I was in London a few years ago, and at the Savoy Hotel, and there's a bartender, a good friend of mine, Eric Lorick, and at that time, I didn't know him well at that time, and we were talking about different products, and I'm telling him about the yellow gins, and I'm saying, of course, let me show you something. And he pulls out the Savoy Cocktail Club, cocktail recipe book, you know, the Savoy, the first edition of that book. And it's a very interesting book because the first edition has all the advertisement of the time. You know, the ads from different brands. And ads from all brands are very interesting because you see what they were boasting about, what they were promoting at the time. And you saw it was at least 2 brands of gin claiming about being aged gin. So with Citadel, we didn't invent anything, we just took it back from history, pulled it out from this history. I thought it was from the 1700s, late 1700s, but really I discovered later on that this way and this type of gins was found in the early 20th century. As you know, aged gin was something that people actually not only did in a passive way because they just had to store it in a cask, but in an active way because where people were using specific cask, typical cask to make this gin. So I'm very proud to say that now you will see more and more aged gin. I know about 5 right now. I've been told in America there is 1 every 6 months, a new one. So we opened the door, and you know, because I think a fresh gin is delicious, and an aged gin is delicious. They are used at different time for different purposes. That will be the job of my friends later on to point their fingers at this. Because you know, I always say, I am the man who makes the violin, who makes the instrument. But you, behind the bar or in the restaurants, or you are talking about the products and making the drinks, are the ones who play the music. We make the instrument. And so that's why for me, my job is to design these wonderful spirits that can create all this gastronomic experience. So that's the way the aged gin is designed, and the research we have done with aged gin. And so that's every step. And I wanted to explain, and I want to go back now to Citadel history. And we are very lucky because in France, I don't know in Spain, but in France, for many centuries, the government is looking at everybody, and they write everything down. They know everything about you know, or about me. And even 300 years ago, and we found in the archives, you know, the library of Dunkirk, we found everything about this distillery, Citadel. This distillery, this Citadel, when I looked into it, was gone. But we knew everything. We knew that they were for the French king. And when the king was beheaded, you know, Louis XVI, they were for the revolution. And they continued producing gin. And we know that they sold by agreement with the French king. They had to sell most of their production illegally to England. Was like they were like the French Al Capone, you know. And that's their, and this is with the warrant of the French king at the time. And they used what they called the smugglers. The smugglers were the Englishmen coming to Dunkirk, loading the boat with some cask of gin, and then hiding it, and they taking it into England. 1775. 1776, what happens? American Revolution. At that time, the English are not very happy because the French are helping the Americans. So there is a big wall, you know, no ships, even with legal merchandise, can cross. So then this distillery starts to sell Genièvre, the ancestor gin, in the rest of France. But at the time, you could see from these documents that they were stored in small casks. So we are sure for sure, technically, then gin at the time had this yellow color from the aging. Some people tell me that people in England drank the gin so fast there was no time for aging. That might be true, but you know, just a few months you have the color already. So that's why I thought it would be very interesting to look into it. It doesn't, if it was done in the old days, doesn't mean it was the right thing to do. So that's why we wanted to try it. But when we tasted what it brought for the taste, we thought that was very, very interesting. Now I want to describe a little bit of what happens when you age. You know, in a cask like this, you have the fibers of the wood, right? The fibers of the wood we use for making Citadelle what we call Limousin oak. It's a tree from France, oak tree, where the grain is quite wide. What happens when the grain is quite wide? In fact, the grain is so wide that you cannot saw the wood. You have to split the wood. If you saw the wood, it would leach out. It would leak. So you have some evaporation of the more aggressive or more lighter, volatile elements of the spirit. And then so it will round it up. It will create more, and especially if you have some of the oily texture from the distillation, you'll have evaporation of some of the more lighter esters we call, and then you'll have, of course, the other ones that are oilier that will slightly concentrate. Now my advice, if there is a gin distiller here, my advice is not to age gin too long. We think that after 5 months and a half, it's the maximum. Because after, the wood taste takes over. You know, so we think the quality, you know, will go up and up like this, up to like 5 months, 4 months, 5 months, depending on the cask, 5 months and a half. After 6 months, the taste becomes more like woody and it takes over. And to me, gin should be refreshing. Gin should be really, and then you lose some of that refreshing taste that gin has once you go through a longer aging. I'm trying to age gin for a few years. I have gin that's been aged for a long time, but it becomes more like a complex spirit, but that doesn't have that magic taste, the very special and magic taste of gin. And to me, gin should, you know, should be with all these very refreshing aromatics, and should have all these, you know, incredible refreshing taste in the mouth. So too much aging is too much aging. This is something I've discovered that past 6 months you have to stop the aging. So that's to me the tipping point of the aging, where you can find the way and how the gin is to its best. I have a question. Did some of you taste other vintages of Citadelle? Today we're tasting the 2012. And anybody remember any other vintages, or maybe not? No? First time you tasted? Ah, sorry. Sorry, yes. Yes, what I thought would be interesting is now that we covered, and by the way, if there's any question, and you can translate, but if there's any question, of course, I'll be more than happy, but maybe it's a good idea you also present how the aged gin is being used, and if there's any comment about the previous vintages, I'm more than happy to discuss that. Thank you.
A lo que ha dicho básicamente, si tenéis alguna pregunta de lo que ha hablado, si me habéis entendido algo.
¿Qué tipo de alcohol utiliza para envejecer? Es decir, ¿es la misma Citadelle o es una Citadelle? Ya hemos visto que es una diferencia amplia, pero...
Did you use the same Citadelle to wait in to bring the Citadelle as you said?
For 2008, yes. We used for the 2008, I will do that video. Yes, for 2008 we used the same Citadelle, and 2009 also. 2010 we understood that the aging took some of the more floral element out, so we started using a little more juniper berries and also a little more of the floral elements such as violet root, for example, and you know, iris, just to balance the aging. And then 2010, 11 and 12, 2010, 11 and 12, we fine-tuned the recipe, and we think that now, and so 10, 11, 12 are slightly different recipes that are fine-tuned to be perfect for aging.
Lo que ha comentado es que al principio que empezaron a crear la citadel reserva en 2008 y 2009 se utilizaba la misma citadel normal para envejecerla. Lo que pasaba es que las notas florales, sobre todo la vainilla, el iris, pegaban por encima de todo y perdía un poco el balance. En 2010, 2011 y 2012 lo que hicieron fue añadir enebro para balancear un poco más la ginebra, y desde entonces, desde 2010 hasta ahora, tiene una ginebra perfecta que le han dado con la receta para lo que pasaba al envejecer, las notas florales se disparaban y quedaban por encima de todo. Se perdía el balance que se buscaba en la cita de norma.
Does the aging process continue with bottle or not?
That's a good question. No, actually.
Ha preguntado que si el proceso de envejecimiento se continúa en la botella una vez embotellado. Eso es una buena pregunta.
So it's a simple question, but it's also a very technical question. I'll say why. Most people, we know that once a spirit is bottled, we know that it doesn't age anymore. Of course, a spirit you never store in the cork, right? Always standing like this, otherwise it will start eating up the cork. But once it's in the bottle, a spirit, if the bottle is full, will stay very stable, doesn't age like a wine. It will evolve, but like every century a little bit. So once it's in the bottle, it doesn't age anymore.
Que separa el proceso de envejecimiento, que al no tener corcho, que puede envejecer, pero dice que es muy estable, sobre todo cuando la botella está llena, que es muy estable, y dice que cambia muy poco de años a años.
So, I have an advice, probably everybody knows, that spirit should never be kept on the cork. Spirit should always be keeping up, otherwise it will pick up the taste of the cork, as opposed to a wine.
Que ha dicho que no se tiene que almacenar igual que los vinos, que tumbados porque tienen corcho. Al tener tapón, que los destilados siempre en posición vertical, no almacenarlos. ¿Alguna pregunta más? Y yo creo que a Nico. De manera de limusín, que tiene el grano más ancho. Tiene grano más ancho, porque eso que tiene grano más ancho y hay como más interacción con el exterior. Se produce más evaporación, o sea, los alcoholes más ligeros son los que se evaporan, las notas más ligeras son las que se evaporan, y eso hace que la envejezca como más diferente de manera que utilizamos otro tipo de manera.
Antes de meter la cita de reserva en la barrica, antes la barrica tenía algo, tenía, no sé, coñac o ron o algo.
So this is a good question. We tried with new barrels, Barrica Nueva, we tried, but the taste was too bitter. It added too much wood. So to us, the best formula is used barrels that we empty and we rinse with gin. We throw the gin away, we rinse it with, and then after we put the gin in there. So the tannins, the harsh tannins are washed out from previous aging, and then by putting the rinsing out the previous spirit and then filling it back up.
Al principio se empezaron a utilizar barrica nueva, pero lo que pasaba es que envejecía muy rápido y le da mucha madera, muchos taninos, mucho amargo a la ginebra. Y al final lo que hacen es utilizar barrica que ya han utilizado previamente en la destilería. ¿Me oye bien ahora?
Sí, pero ¿con qué?
Yeah, right now it's cognac cask, and in 2013 some of the cask will be Pinot de Charente. You know, it's like a Mistral type of wine.
Que antes sí que tenía, al principio la nueva, luego utilizaban barrica de coñac, y lo que hacen antes de llenar la barrica, le hacen un pequeño aclarado con ginebra, tiran esa ginebra de un aclarado a la barrica y meten la citadel, la fórmula de citadel Risset, dentro de la barrica para envejecerla.
At what point of ABV to bring the age of the bottle?
That's a very good question too. We do different barrels with different ABV, but it's usually around 58–59% alcohol.
To extract more out of the
To extract a little more. And then during the aging, we water down progressively, step by step.
So let me understand, we do different barrels and we do a blend then?
We do, so the original formula, we did different barrels, bottled separately. That's why if you look on the back label, you can see the number of the barrel. Here, this is barrel number 8 out of 29 barrels. In 2012, we did 29 barrels. So this bottle is from the barrel number 8, and that's the bottle number 199. And so
the evolution of the gene in different barrels is always different, right?
for until 2013, 2012. 2013, I think it's the final tuning. It will be Solera. It is already, I'm working. So from different barrels, some is cognac barrels, some is, Pinot de Chardonnay barrels to add a little bit floriness, a little bit sweetness. And then we have a mother barrel, some is more younger barrels, older barrels. I'm using many different kinds. And in that case, we will have one blend of the different casks.
After it's coming out of the cask, you only add water to produce the ABV.
For this one, it's only water.
Nothing else.
Nothing else. This is extra dry. Remember, Citadel is 100% pure. There's not even 1 gram of sugar added. It's not a dry gin, it's an extra dry gin. Because of the distillation method, you don't need sugar.
For the continuous color year by year, do you add Caraba to
Not at all. Not, absolutely not. And in fact, you will see that from one year to the other, the color is a little bit different.
Right.
Because this is the color of nature.
Okay.
There's no caramel.
Fair enough.
Hey, good question though. Thank you.
A ver si me acuerdo de todo.
Maybe you can.
Ha preguntado primero que a cuántas graduaciones alcohólicas se exponía la Citadel Riesler al envejecer en las barricas y ha dicho que unos 58, 59, 58, 59 grados de volumen alcohólico se pone a envejecer para extraer un poquito más de la madera. ¿Qué más ha preguntado? Sí, seguramente le añadía agua para obtener la graduación de 44 grados. Es lo que es solamente agua, no se le añade nada de azúcar. Me ha comentado para el tema del color si se utilizaba algún tipo de caramelo para homogeneizar el color. Ha dicho que no se añade nada de azúcar, incluso si observáis las añadas del 2008, 2009, 2010, varía el color de un año a otro, porque no se le añade nada de color natural que coge de la barrica, de estar entre lo que ha comentado, entre 4 meses y medio, 5 meses y medio en la barrica de coñac.
¿Cuál es el origen del alcohol jacobínico, alcohol cereales, certificado?
What kind of alcohol do you use?
We use wheat, French wheat. We call French whole wheat, not the broken wheat, but the wheat made that you use to make French bread. So it's the best quality wheat we can find in France, and it's called whole wheat, not broken wheat. And that's the one French people use to make the French baguette. That's the same wheat. And it's from the Beauce, so it's from the area around where you have the best wheat area of France.
Lo que utilizan es trigo, el whole wheat es del trigo pero entero, no roto. Lo que se utiliza para hacer, por ejemplo, el pan allí en Francia y lo utilizan el trigo entero, se da alcohol así.
Yes. I have something to say about this, by the way. To me, of course, this is an important question, but but there's really in the gin, there's of course the base wheat is very important, but to me, I've done a lot of research with this, and we have also our own wheat field. I'm a farmer, so we have a wheat field, and I discovered that instead of cultivating the wheat, I should better cultivate juniper berries, because for gin, the most important part is not the neutral spirit you use for, is the quality of the botanicals. That's my discovery. Of course, it's obvious, but it's the quality of the botanicals and the quality of the pot still, the distillation. It's like a painter. The base spirit is like the canvas. You will have translated. So, is it white canvas? Is it grainy? But the botanicals are the color, and the pot still is the talent of the painter. And so to me, of course, the base spirit is important. Wheat spirit gives a nice, comfortable taste. But to me, what's very important is the quality of the botanicals. If you're interested about this, at 8 o'clock I will do a seminar about the quality of the botanicals, how we choose them, and how they need to be infused and distilled. And so that's something very important we feel, you know, of course the botanicals and the distilling method. But of course base is very important. But to me, I gave up the effort, you know, because I think what's very important is the quality of the juniper berries. Very, very important.
Lo que ha dicho es que básicamente el alcohol base importa, pero para él no es lo más importante. Lo más importante es la calidad de los botánicos. En este caso, el enebro, las vallas de enebro. Él tiene campos de trigo, pero lo más importante para él era el enebro y los botánicos. Que luego más tarde, si queréis, a las 8 os va a dar una clase de cómo para él y cómo es la importancia realmente de la frescura de los botánicos y de lo que utilizan. Ha puesto el ejemplo de un pintor. El cuadro, el canvas que se utiliza a la hora de pintar sería el alcohol base, pero realmente lo que importa es el color que añades a ese cuadro. Que para él, esos colores eran los botánicos que utilizan para hacer tinta, que es lo que realmente importa.
Just, we're gonna have to stop, so can you translate? Perfect. So I'm gonna, very quickly, I'm gonna talk about aged gin in cocktail.
Que rápidamente, tenemos que parar, pero rápidamente vamos a hablar sobre las ginebras envejecidas en cócteles.
And then, don't worry, we will go away. If you look at the history of gin, as we said, it was always aged in cask. And it was always put in cask, especially for the Navy.
Que si hablamos de la historia de la ginebra o de las ginebras envejecidas, siempre se habla de las ginebras envejecidas en barrica, más que nada para transportarlas.
So English Navy were big drinker of rum and gin, and one of the first drink they made at this time with gin was punch.
Vale, que la naviera inglesa fueron la primera que empezó a navegar, ¿no? por el mar, y que la primera
drink was punch.
Que la primera bebida que se hizo utilizando este tipo de ginebra fue el ponche.
So most of the time gin was not as good as today, so they used to mix it with water, with tea and spices.
Que no tenemos en aquella época la ginebra que había, no era de tanta calidad como la que tenemos hoy en día, entonces lo que hacían era mezclarla para darle un poco ese sabor. La mezclaban con té, con agua y especias.
Y lima.
Y lima.
Sí. Yeah. Then it was like that for a couple hundred years. Then we arrive in the beginning of the 20th century with the explosion of cocktails, especially with a guy called Harry Johnson from the Savoy in London.
Vamos a un salto en la historia hasta el crecimiento, el boom de los cócteles, el nacimiento de las primeras coctelerías y los primeros cócteles. Vamos al siglo XIX, a 1900, con Harry Johnson y el libro del Savoy.
Yes, see, and as Alexander said, Harry Johnson's favorite gin was an aged gin called Boots, which doesn't exist anymore. And his favorite drink, which is actually on the first page of the Savoy cocktail book, is a cocktail called the White Bride, using Boots aged gin. So nowadays they use it as a Savoy with Citadel Reserve, which makes it very interesting because it's very oily and very easy to use with all the strong stuff, and in terms of sugar and everything. So they use it with actually dry Curaçao, Citadel Reserve, a little bit of sugar and lime.
Ha dicho básicamente que la ginebra favorita de Harry Johnson, que aparece en la primera hoja del libro del Savoy, era una ginebra que se llamaba Boots, que ya no existe, ya no la podemos encontrar en el mercado, que era una ginebra envejecida. Y el primer cóctel que viene es el de White Bridge, la navia blanca.
¿No? Sí.
La navia blanca, que lleva ginebra, en este caso Citadel Reserve, que vamos a utilizar con ginebra Citadel Reserve, dry Curaçao, lima
y una poco de azúcar.
Y una cucharita de azúcar.
So this is the way they used to drink it. Then we moved to the boom of gin, where plain gin was mainly used with dry martini. So please don't use any vodka and dry martini. It should be gin, and never shake it, stir it. Never do like James Bond, please.
Unos pequeños consejos para hacer un dry martini, de utilizar nunca utilicemos un vodka para hacer un dry martini si ya tenemos una ginebra compleja, y que nunca lo agitemos, que siempre lo removamos.
Yeah, James Bond is a little girl. And yeah, nowadays, with the explosion of gin and tonic, actually I'm going to let Jesus tell you how they use it in Spain, because I think it's very interesting, mixing the aged gin and the plain gin.
Básicamente, me hablamos un poco de cómo utilizar la Citadel Reserve en el mercado español. Todos sabemos, vamos a hablar un poco del gin tonic, que todos estamos acostumbrados. El uno de los perfectos que recomienda la casa para el consumo de la Citadel Reserve es tomarla o bien sola con hielo, una cascarita de lima y cortada con mucho, máximo 1:1, a proporción 1:1, por una tónica más neutral posible para realmente apreciar el trabajo que tiene la Citadel Reserve detrás. Otra manera que hemos estado empleando hace tiempo para el consumo de Citadel Reserve es el Citadel Duo o el Gin Tonic Duo, utilizando 4 centilitros de la Citadel normal, preparar el Gin Tonic una vez está terminado, darle unos 2 centilitros más o menos de Citadel Reserve por encima, buscando un poco, darle un poco más de complejidad al Gin Tonic. En este caso vuelvo un poco más a lo mismo. Alexander lo ha comentado antes, que para él la explosión de la ginebra fue justamente la explosión, coincidió también en el tiempo con la explosión de los cócteles, del nacimiento de los primeros cócteles. Cualquier cóctel clásico que cojamos y sustituyamos una ginebra normal por una ginebra envejecida, lo que vamos a aportar es mucho más complejo a ese cóctel. O los vermouth, por ejemplo, un Negroni o un Berlioz, que es una variante del Negroni que se hizo en Alemania, que lleva vermouth seco y chinat, va fantástico. Sobre todo con el tema que trabaja con los vermouth, vamos a darle más complejidad al cóctel, aún más que cabe, y vamos a ligarlo más con vermouth y tal, y por toda esa parte en nariz le habéis encantado ahora, sobresalen las notas cítricas, pero a la vez esa redondez que ha hablado Alexandre antes, una redondez que tiene la ginebra y un punto así como meloso, suntuoso, que es lo que busca es esa textura que tiene la ginebra, y lo que vamos a conseguir sustituyendo una ginebra normal por una ginebra envejecida en un cóctel.
And just to finish with, there is a big trend right now in the world of cocktail, which is aged cocktail. And because of the texture of gin, which is very oily, as we said, it's very easy to age it. And trust me, an aged Martinez with Citadel Reserve, aged in a small cask like that for several months, will make something amazing.
Que ahora está muy de moda, todos lo sabemos, pero estamos metidos en el mundo de la coctelería y el envejecimiento de los cócteles. Imagina utilizar una ginebra que por sí es muy untuosa, que tiene mucha textura, por ejemplo un Martínez envejecido de barrica por unos cuantos meses, pues va a conseguir esa untuosidad, esa textura, todos los aceites que ha comentado Alexandre Gabriel, que es el cuello de cisne a la hora de destilar, que se producía un montón de aceites esenciales y de esa untuosidad, esa textura que se buscaba, pues se lo vamos a aportar al cóctel y va a estar fantástico seguro.
And if you don't like cocktail, just drinking on its own, it's perfect.
Que si no gustan los cócteles, que lo toméis sola o un gin tonic.
Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias por